Hey, this is Peggy with Easy Peasy Machine Embroidery, and today I am in MySewNet Platinum, and I had a person on my Facebook group that was asking some questions about lettering. So I am going to try to attempt to cover some more about lettering today. Let's begin. So I am going to open up let's do this. Let's go straight into let's back up a little bit. Let's go into blank canvas to start with. And we're going to enter the hoop size of 56 by 15. Because that's the size of the lettering that he wants to be messing with. So we are also going to go into the Create tab and go into Digitizing. And we're going to load or create a background picture. And I'm going to load the picture, and I have a folder in my desktop, I believe. Well, here's the picture in either case. And we're going to say next. And I am going to crop my picture. And I'm going to say next. And finish. One of the questions that was asked before I get too far was what are these little hexagons or whatever they are? And they are showing the direction of that satin stitch. Otherwise, all the stitches would run all the same way. So you can take these little nodes and you can shift them as needed if you need to. This is where the stitch starts. This is where the stitch ends. When you see a circle node, that is generally for curves. If you see square nodes, that is generally for a direct angle. To make a circle into a square, you just tap on it and hold down I believe it's the Shift key. Premier Plus and MySewNet, it's the opposite key, so I'm always confused because I use both of the programs. But I believe it is the Shift key. If not, just hold down the Control key and it will turn to a square. A couple other things. This design that was given to me has this area. That would be a problem. And to correct that, I would go up to View, and I would go Edit Background, and I would go into the Paint program, and I would probably get my little magnifying glass out, and I'm gonna click on the Pick Color and pick that black color so that this color right here changes to black. I'm going to go get my paintbrush, and I'm going to get rid of some of that extra. And I'm sure that the original picture does not have that. But for this purpose, that's what I'm going to do. And I have the clicker, and I'm going to pick the orange. And I'm going to get the paintbrush again, except this time I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to resize it a bit. And I could also go here and get squares. And we have to remember that we are working in a very small space. So I'm just going to go through and change where that item was. And we should be good. And then I'm just going to click the X again, and it takes me right back. You can see that still needs a little work here, but I'm not going to worry about it because I'm not stitching this out. And I know that the original picture probably did not have that little symbol in there. Anyway, so a couple of ways to do this. If you go to Quick Create and you set your pattern fill, you can also tell it what kind of a line you want. And usually for something like this, I would either do just a double stitch or triple stitch. Depends on what it's on, really. You don't even have to put anything on the outside. And for the pattern fill, see now I'm not getting the satin column. So I'm not sure quite how he got that, unless he went over here and actually did the satin area. So what I would do is I would set my pattern, and the difference between quick stitch and quick stitch with auto hole is that it will cut around areas so that it doesn't fill the entire section. So I am going to use quick fill with auto hole. I'm going to change my color over right now to the orange, and I'm just going to drop it in there. And you can determine whether you have a low number of points or high. Okay, and right now there's a satin stitch there. I can actually right click on here and right click one more time, and I can take that satin line and I can tune that right down to a 1 if I wanted to. Satin line is not going to be good for this size of lettering, so I'm just going to say no borderline. The pattern fill. You can change your pattern fill to any of those things. And say if we wanted this one, we could actually change its angle. Okay. We're going to not do that one. I'm going to hit cancel there. And I'm going to right click over on my panel, the slides, and say delete. So I'm going to get rid of that and say no borderline. I'm going to leave the pattern fill on. I'm not going to do a satin stitch at this point. I'm going to do quick fill auto hole. And I'm just going to fill those in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So there you go with that. If I suddenly decided that I wanted to use a triple stitch around everything, and I don't want to do it all over again, I can go to click on any one of these. I can go into global properties, and I can say, yep, I want a double stitch now. And another thing for this design, because we have curves and whatnot, and I'll show you, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. My stitch is too big, and it's going to cause these types of lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Global Properties again, and I am going to bump my stitch down to a 1.5 and see if that works. And it looks like it does. Okay, so that is how I personally would do that lettering. I'm thinking there for a second. I've never really used satin columns. I'm not a big satin column type of person. I'm going to stop this for a second and show you something else. All right, I want to take a minute to talk about nodes so you completely understand that. If I go to Point Create and I say that I'm going to do a pattern fill, and let's do a satin line, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to drop a node here and here and here and here. Notice how it's not a square. So if I hold down my shift key and turn them into squares, we're good to go. That is the difference between the curved and the square node. Another thing for people who are still using Premiere, I can be in the digitizing mode and then go right straight over to the regular embroidery program, and there it is. So I can go back and forth. I must have an extra box open here. Okay, so I can go back and forth. I could go to the digitizing, I can go to the main embroidery program. And by the same thing, if I click finish here, I can still get into the digitizing by either going, I can get in back into the digitizing by going into the slide panel and right clicking and saying edit digitizing, and it takes me right back in. And now I can alter whatever I want. The other thing I always do, just for kicks and giggles, you really don't have to do this, but I tend to be bebopping around all over the place. So I do a file and I do a save as, and a save as will keep it as an EDO file, which means it is the digitizing file, the editable file. And you can just click on that, and I'm going to put it in the desktop, and I'm going to go back into, I'm going to drop it in my video folder. And so say I close out here, totally get rid of it. And now I want to go back in and do something with it because I just stitched it out and it's not quite what I want. So I'm going to go to the Create, to Digitizing. And now I am going to say Load Existing Design. And there it is. So say I want to smooth out an area. I can take and move these nodes to smooth things out. I can also take right here and switch the direction of my pattern fill. If I want to add a node, I can do that through the Home tab, and I can say Insert a Point. But yeah, the big thing is you have to remember if you're in this section, you need to go back into edit points. If I keep clicking on points, because I just inserted a point, it's going to just keep inserting, inserting, inserting. So that's not what you want. So you go into edit and then you smooth things out or move things in and you're good to go. Also, at this point, if you want a square, smooth, symmetricals, whatever, you can also click on that and change things around a little bit. Another thing, if you know exactly what you're going to be doing ahead of time, you can go to fill area and line and you can set those things and they will default. Everything you'll do will be using the settings that you apply here. Or like I said, a right click inside the nodes and generally you can go right back into this menu. You can also add gradients to your fills so that you can add a marker and another marker and you can change the colors of those markers. That takes some playing around to mess with, but that's kind of what it would do. And you can move those markers. So if we wanted just a little bit of that green showing, and we hit apply, gives it another different look. So, and lots of playing to be done. All right, I'm going to go back into the regular program. Say you had some lettering. I'm going to do a Control H, and I'm going to get real fancy here and pretend I'm on my Epic 3. And I want to do a border across the bottom of a lap quilt. And I'm going to use lettering that is way bigger than any lettering that's on here. So I'm going to find a lettering. I could use stencil. I could use Astra, and that's one that has the gradient on it. I'm looking for a nice blocky lettering. I'm going to use Impact, and it says the lettering will go up to 60 millimeters. But I want it to go to 120, maybe. Let's see. Yep. So that's 120. And that is done with the satin column. And guess what? I know that if my lettering, and I'm going to go over here to view, and I'm going to get length, and I want to see how wide that satin column is. Okay, that's almost 25 millimeters. And you really shouldn't go, too awfully big because it's gonna snag on everything. So, what do you do in that type of a situation? So, what I can do is I'm going to just select that lettering and I am going to right click and see where it says satin column. So that's pattern 0. Have to remember that one. And now I can drop it down And I can change it to any one of these textures. What I really wish I could do here is change the angle. And I'm not seeing that. But there is another choice there, and that will not snag on everything. And another question that was asked, I'm going to go into Point Create, and I'm going to have a satin line, and I'm going to create line or area. And because there's no fill, I'm going to hold down my and I'm going to draw a line right there. And I'm going to draw another line that's going to butt up against it. I have a reasoning for doing this. So if I double click it and I'm right clicking, here's your start point, here's your end point. So say we're on this one, there's the end point. Know that? It says E. And then I have to use either this one or this one probably to create that angle. So I'm going to zoom right in on it. So see how that angle was created? One right click, second right click, and now I can change it and apply it, and that's the one I wanted. So now I can move it back out. Okay, and if I were to take and make that a different color, oops, I did it for the whole thing, so I'm going to say insert color change, and I'm going to turn that into a yellow so I can see that better. There is a way to fix that still into the Stitch Editor program. So let's see what I've got over here. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. Same thing over here. I can drag that one up here. I can right click on it and say, okay, so that's the end point. So I'm going to click on this one. And you can also change the angles of those babies. So I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to just move that right up here in there. So you're good to go. So that's how to change the beginning and end points. I'm going to get rid of this. And now I'm not going to go back into digitizing. I'm going to do a fix as stitches because they have to be actual stitches before you go back into Stitch Editor. So you can go edit design here, or over here you can right click and go into Stitch Editor. And we can go into View, 2D View with Stitch Points, and it's going to show us where our points are. And I am going to use my little ruler here, and I'm going to zoom in even closer, and I can see that there's just a wee bit of overlap here, so I can go into the home section, select stitches, and I can take these stitches and move them outward. So that there isn't as much overlap. Okay, so now I am back into, I exited out up here and I went right back into the regular main screen. And the thing I want to caution you, make sure you don't have extra boxes open, because if you do and you make changes and you're in the wrong box or whatever, it's just gonna delete things on you. So make sure you're only working on like one thing at a time. If you're going to add to it or whatever, do it here. Go back into digitizing and you'll have another panel here. That's the difference also between VP3 and VP4. So if I were to add more lettering here, and let's go back down to a normal size. Let's say 40. If I were to add more lettering here, if I say do a save as, it's going to save it as a VP4, and everything here is going to be left as is. You can still go back in and change things around. You can say, I want to change the color, I want to go into the editing, I want to take the satin columns and change them over to something else. Those kinds of things, okay? So, VP3 on the other hand, that's when you export it, and I have everything unchecked here so I can control what I want done. But usually VP3 does the color sort and the combine and everything, and you're not getting back in there to do editing. Alrighty. I think that's probably enough for today. And if you have more questions, you can ask. I did not cover the satin stitch, the satin column. I'm going to work on a little bit more of that today and see if I can't learn a little bit more about it. And hope you've learned something from this video. Catch you later. Bye.